Hello, stream. We are
almost ready.
almost ready. A few technical hiccups, a few YouTube hiccups, a few hiccups, you know, a little bit of everything. So,
all right, let me get mine up real quick.
Hopefully my camera plays nice tonight. We'll see. If not, you're getting the VTuber Spyder. Although I don't know how I'd do that on Discord, because the only way I freaked Totem out with it earlier. The only way I could get it on Discord was to run an OBS virtual camera, and I don't know if I can do that at the same time that I am streaming. So it's like multiple layers of Inception.
All right, let me get an SD up, and then I'm gonna go.
Yeah. Just let me know when you're ready, and I'll hit the record button. But we took so long, I'm running out of margarita.
Oh no. My Discord audio is really low. I wonder if I could turn down. I do. That's what it is. Okay.
I mean, I can crank myself up too.
Oh, no, I mean, no, I'd rather just do mine.
No, that'll mess with the levels on my side too. I'm sorry for anybody listening right now. I'm sure that was loud as shit.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're balanced.
Yeah.
Close enough. All right. Let me switch this over and not have the Discord audio settings up,
Woo.
preferably.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you gonna go?
I'm ready. I will start the recording.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, starting.
Wow. That's pretty professional.
Yeah.
What's up, nerds, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things competitive Overwatch and Overwatch 2. I am your host, Simply Drunk, and, we got quite a bit to cover tonight with the return of the Summer Games, as well as the start of the Summer Stage in the Overwatch League, as that officially got underway earlier this afternoon. That's right, we had Thursday games, Spyder, and I was like, holy shit, I totally forgot. Because normally, we sit down to record bi-weekly on Thursdays, and normally, typically Thursday would be my off day, and I would go through this routine where I would constantly complain that I'm off, but there's no games on. Today actually worked, and there were games on, but it threw me for a loop today when I got home. I was like, oh yeah, there were games on today.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that later, though. But before we dive right in, just a few general reminders. Of course, you can stay connected with us over on Twitter at HND Overwatch. You can find all of our video content on YouTube, also at HND Overwatch. Of course, the best way to stay connected with us is via our community Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. Now, with that being said, joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Spyder. Guys, apologies for the late start. He mentioned, we had a couple of hiccups. I was also watching Genesis Part 1 and 2 because I was lazy and was sleeping before the podcast, so I didn't have time to watch the 12 minutes or whatever it was beforehand after I wrote my show notes. But that's besides the points. It was also just a ploy in hopes that maybe Ramses would be here earlier in the show. So we'll see whether or not that plays dividends or not. I don't know if it will. He hasn't said anything all day, but time will tell on that front. But it has been 2 weeks. We have had quite a bit going on. Primarily with World Cup, kind of like mid-season stuff, with a lot of other like roster apocalypse news with the teams kind of like shifting gears, some of which we already got to see a bit come into play earlier today with some of the new faces. But how have you been doing, Spyder? Because it's been a few weeks.
I'm doing good. I finished the battle pass. I beat D&D, so I got to see the end of the story. It resolves pretty much exactly how you expect it to. Spoiler alert. But other than that, I kind of took a little bit of a break from Overwatch, as I tend to do, for about a week. I did jump in and play some of the summer games. I played one game of Lucio Ball. That was enough Lucio Ball for me. And then I played 2 games of the Winston volleyball, and it's okay. It's fun. I don't know, like the summer games, like mini games, just I don't know. They never do it for me. So I will withhold my major thoughts on it because I'm sure someone out there likes it, and I don't want to ruin their fun. So if you enjoy it, more power to you. I will say the skins look pretty good. I do like the new event tab. Like the stuff they rolled out with the event is pretty cool. But as far as like just the other stuff, it's an event. Like the event challenges are nice. If you're still grinding that battle pass, that's nice. So unfortunately, like I said, I finished it. So, and none of the titles are like super exciting for me this time. So, I don't know. I'll probably pop in here and there and play some Overwatch, but I've been playing a lot of Destiny. Like I got into a clan with Destiny, and basically they've been taking me through the raids because unlike World of Warcraft, the raids in Destiny are always relevant. The ones that are still in the game, so you can still get stuff out of them that your character can use. So that's nice. So I've been going through and learning that stuff. Like I streamed like half an hour earlier on my channel just as a test to see how that went. So I haven't looked at any of that, but mostly the past couple of weeks, it's been me like fiddling with that kind of stuff. And then just the boring normal real life stuff like work and stuff has been really hectic. I'm trying to
Mm.
get some new certifications, so I'm like learning, like I'm reading. Sorry if my camera just went out. Like I think it just completely died, so hopefully you can still hear me. um,
I can still hear you.
okay.
But yeah, you are definitely frozen.
Yeah, my camera's having connection issues, so I'll stop talking there and go to fix my camera real quick.
But yeah, I've kind of been like all over the place these recent weeks. Just a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But I've been enjoying the World Cup. Obviously, get to see Team US really knocking it out of the park. The prediction that we had for the complete off roll for the later matches did happen. So that was absolutely fantastic to see. We also have an update to the U.S. team, which we'll talk about in our esports news, with a player that had recently retired from the Overwatch League, who also signed a collegiate deal as well. But I haven't had an opportunity to hop in to check out the summer games yet. Obviously, I've seen some of the knee-jerk reactions to it. There seems to be quite a few bugs with the summer games right now. But all in all, I was very intrigued by the balance changes, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. I wanted to start off by talking about the newest thing that dropped, at least in regards to additional content in the media form, and that is that Overwatch got the animated treatment with a new 3-part miniseries called Genesis. And this has really been a long time coming after we had heard so many teases about a potential like Netflix animated series for like the Diablo franchise, which, in case you guys haven't realized, still hasn't seen the light of day at this point. But Genesis is basically serving as a prequel centered around the Omni Crisis, and obviously Overwatch, and the heroes who helped put a stop to it. And at this point, we've had part one. Part two dropped earlier today. And as I said, I was watching these just before we hopped on stream, and it's kind of bittersweet, Spider, because for the longest time we're like, okay, we want to see some additional media out there to help build the lore, and we've had the animated shorts, which are still the cream of the crop, and it's not even close. We had the comics, which were extremely short form. We also kind of like had the animated form for the comics as well, which were a bit more unique. But I wouldn't say like it really added a lot to the overall story, just because like it was still based off the comic, and the comics were really only like 7, 8 pages or whatever. So not a whole lot of expansion on that front. And then turn around and we have Genesis, and you know, part one was like 5 minutes. The other one was like 6.5, and it's like it kind of just feels like more of the same. It's a great concept, but it feels like a lot of fluff. It's like it's a tease. It's just a little bit of a taste, and to only do like, okay, we got a 3-part series. Yes, that's great, but that's not what we want as a community. Like we want something that's fully fledged out, and what we're getting here isn't quite that. Mm-hmm. Mhm. Yeah, that one Omnic was tired of the little girl shit and did not want to participate in a tea party anymore. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Yep. Drops his fist on the table, it smashes in half. But yeah, like, when between part one and part two, I had that moment where I'm just like, are they seriously gonna do a recap of part one? But no, it was just a straight continuation. So thank God they didn't do that, because there's no need for it when it's only like 5, 6 minutes anyway. But yeah, obviously they were talking a little bit about Anubis and the God program, which was great to see. But part three is gonna be the payoff. But yeah, it's really just a retreat. Now obviously, like we've already seen a lot of this just through like the like retribution and like the mission archives and things like that already up to this point. So it's like, all right, let's get to a newer part of the story in this case. But we'll see how part three ends up being. But in the meantime, obviously, in game, we did have a new patch that was deployed to live servers on Tuesday this week, which brought back the Summer Games seasonal events, as well as some mid season balance changes. So, first up, let's talk about some of the adjustments that they made to the On Fire system. So, On Fire and Blazon are more difficult to attain early in a round. They also made it where the On Fire cooldown was reduced to 3 seconds. The On Fire score decays slightly more quickly when a hero is not on fire. Then maintaining on fire for longer periods is more difficult. So it's interesting because like I remember initially, like, when they brought it back, and I'm just like, okay, so you can just be even more on fire. But then it seems like, oh, well, people are becoming on fire too quick now. We're like, okay, we gotta space it out just a little bit. But then they're like, all right, some people are just staying on fire for too long, so we're gonna scale that back a little bit. So it's, incremental changes in this case. But like realistically, at the end of the day, like I don't really hear a ton of people like raving about the on fire system. So I'm very curious to see like why they're making so many adjustments to this when it's not like necessarily like a game breaking feature within the game here. Mhm. Yeah, like whether or not you have four friends to do team Q. Mhm. Yeah, so Team Q has been added to competitive, allowing players to group up regardless of how far apart their ranks are. So what's different about this is that players do not queue for specific roles in this mode. So it's not role queue based, but you still are playing one tank, two support, two damage, but you're not locked to a specific role in this case. And they still have the platform pool restrictions in play. So you can't do PC and console
Mm-hmm.
players together. They are kept separate. Which I can't say I was too surprised by because it still is competitive
Yep.
at the end of the day, so that's why it's there. But I remember initially when they were talking about this, the big picture is a potential tournament mode within Overwatch 2,
Yep.
and I would say out of community wanted features, that has been pretty high up there.
Yep. That and
The,
probably clans or guilds.
yes. The problem though, Spyder, is how many people are actually playing the mode?
Yeah, I don't know. Like obviously, I see a lot of streamers playing it because this is basically what they've asked for. Like they were like, so what if we go in there and we get pounced by Overwatch League teams? Like this is what we wanted. This is something we've been looking forward to. But for the average player, I think I think as long as enough, I I'm curious to see what they want for engagement. Like, are they looking like for 5%? Are they looking for like 10%? Are they happy with like 2%? Um, and I'm curious to see how the skill demographics break out. Like, is it going to be a lot of people in the same skill range? Like, is it going to be a lot of grandmasters that haven't been able to queue together, finally queuing together, or is it going to be like just people all over the place? So I'm curious to see what their bar is for, um, I guess, how good this game mode does. I guess is the easiest way to say it. Overall, I think this is a good idea. Like I understand why they have restrictions at the higher levels, obviously I understand why there is rank restrictions in general. Like you can't queue with a grandmaster if you're silver and stuff like that. Like that makes sense. Um, but to me, the one thing that I I will never understand is why there isn't a solo queue and why there isn't like just a team queue. Like it's just weird to me that they separated out. And I know they said like we don't want to split the player base and stuff like that. Um, I don't think that's ever been a problem. Like every other competitive game does that in one way or another. So it's very weird to me. Um, and I know for like the higher ranked players, like I know grandmasters always bitch that they can only group with one other player. Um, open that up. Like I think there's no reason at this point to not open that up because rank is ranked. Like okay, if the NYXL 5 stack wants to run at 12 to 4 in the morning, okay, then maybe you just don't play competitive at that point and you go find something else to do. You run into them once and say, all right, I'm not queuing into that shit again. I'm done. I'm gonna go play Mystery Heroes or something. So it's weird that they've kind of forced that restriction on the higher ranks. Um, so I don't know. I hope this does well because I want a tournament mode. Like I want that kind of stuff because I think even as somebody who probably won't participate in it, I think it's healthy for the community. I think it creates storylines, it creates community engagement. If they run a tournament every weekend that you can, theoretically you can watch in the game or in a game client because you could do that in other competitive games. So that is my hope down the line. I think that would be really fun. Like, can you imagine like if they run a tournament every weekend and like you and I just hop on and like cast a game? Like, oh, this is the Dark X 69 XXX team that's been running through this tournament all season, and he's up against the hot dog horny sandwiches. Like I think that would be hilarious. Like it would be so fun to like cast something like that, and I think that would be a good way to grow the community engagement. So I do hope this does well. Like um, I think this is a cool feature. I just think this is something that should be in the game all the time. So, but I'm not going to be too hard on it. Like I said, I've been watching like streamers play it like during work to keep myself sane because I don't know if anybody has ever read like a CompTIA book, but that is like the densest, boringest book I've ever read. So, occasionally I can look up and see like Flats and Emong doing something stupid. So they seem to be enjoying it. So I will live vicariously through people who have friends.
Yeah. Yeah, so needless to say, like for the average Joe, might not see a ton of playtime, but if I were to imagine, it's probably Master and above primarily being the ones who are using this the most, more so than anyone below that combined. But time will tell whether or not they expand on a tournament mode. But as I said, it has been one of the more requested features out there. I just wish we had some data to go along with this. Because like the last like player base information I saw, in regards to like a daily player base was like just shy of 2 million, for Overwatch 2, which was like I'm trying to remember, it was like up 2 or 3% over last month.
It's still popular. Like I still find games immediately. Like, in the core skill range, which is gold and platinum, which as we found out, it like you can find games instantly for any of the roles at this point,
Right.
unless you're on flex queue, and then it's support every time. So, but I hope it does well. Like I will be watching as the GM players play the rest of the season.
Absolutely. So we did have a number of balance updates for the midseason patch as well. So let's run through this. I'm just gonna go like
Rapid
roll
fire?
by roll.
Okay.
Yeah. So looking at the tanks, Orisa fortified damage reduction was increased from 40% to 50%. Our Matra Ravenous Vortex projectile now passes through enemy heroes, but is still blocked by barriers. Reinhardt's barrier field max health was increased from 1200 to 1400. And for Wrecking Ball, the quad cannon manual reload time was reduced from 2 to 1.6 seconds, while the reload in Ball still remains at 2 seconds. All right, so you're talking a little bit about Reinhardt being able to choose the on fire system.
Yeah. I
And
don't
then,
know yeah, I don't know exactly how he did it. It did have something to do with this barrier and block damage, but I forget what it was. As far as these changes go, I think the Orisa change is stupid because she's like one buff away from being stupidly overpowered again. She's going to be in the meta immediately as soon as she gets one more buff, because she's been getting these micro buffs like every patch or like every other patch, and she's already decent, especially at like R ranks. Like she is a bully that just does not die if you know how to cycle your cooldowns. So I feel like they're creeping Orisa up again. So she'll probably be meta next season. Ramatra's change is amazing. Like I've been playing a lot of Ramatra because if I'm not in support jail, I'm in tank jail. So I've been trying to learn Ramatra, and I can't tell you how annoying it is to like throw that vortex down and watch it hit like 4 people and then land like somewhere you had no idea it was going to land. So this has been a great change in the matches I've played since the patch. The Reinhardt change I think is stupid. Like this is not what Reinhardt needed. Reinhardt either needs armor or he needs like swing speed or something, because Reinhardt's goal in Overwatch 2 is not Mr. Square Shield Man anymore. Like that is not what he's good at anymore. He is good at closing the distance and swinging. Like that is his threat. So this change effectively does nothing to Reinhardt at every level, except for that one guy at King's Row who plays Reinhardt, stands at the choke and will not press W. Like now he can stand there for 2 seconds longer, like, or a second and a half longer. Like that's it. In the
it's just like a minor delay on the shatter game, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. The Wrecking Ball change is cool. I think this is just a nice quality of life change. Like Wrecking Ball players almost never manually reloaded. I don't play a lot of Wrecking Ball, but I do have a friend who was a tank and got really good at Wrecking Ball. Now that's almost exclusively what he plays, and he loves this change because he's like, now I can go in the back line and harass them and actually reload without having to roll away, if they're not looking at me. So I don't think this changes his power level at all. I think this just makes it a little easier when he's like behind the enemy lines and he doesn't need to switch in and out of ball form as much.
Yeah, I don't think it's really gonna do enough to like swap him kind of like out of the control jail that he's kind of been in
No.
for a while now. So we're probably still going to see quite a bit of play, at least in that regard.
Mhm.
But yeah, outside of that, I think the Ramatra change is probably going to be the most impactful, at least in regards to like the current meta landscape that we are seeing. But
Absolutely.
nothing has really brought everything up to like the level of the Sombra Tracer dive at this point. Winston is primarily still going to be the meta pick across the board, with primarily Ramatra kind of like filling in, kind of like the off role
Mhm.
in this case. Now, that being said, we did have a number of DPS changes as well, some to turret heroes.
Woo!
But we also got some buff to hit scan. So looking at Sojourn, the railgun number of shots to reach max spread was increased from 8 to 12, and also the spread was reduced by 12%.
Mhm.
Soldier 76 got a bit of love as well. The pulse rifle damage was increased from 18 to 19. Helix rocket explosion damage was increased from 80 to 90. And the biotic field healing per second was also increased from 35 to 40. All right, so Spyder, I saw some videos posted on social media about the Sojourn changes. And I always love when people post these because like they always pick the most absolute mundane way to do it. They
Yep.
hop in, they go to the training mode, and then they just shoot
Sojourn's so
stationary
broken.
targets. And everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is unbelievable!" And you're seeing like how quickly these dummies are dying. And I'm just thinking like, "Oh my god, here we go again." I checked the replies, and of course, like one of the first replies I see is the same thing, but with Tracer, with the with the pulse rifles or the pulse pistols being up close and just one clip at everyone. Oh my god, how come Tracer hasn't been nerfed? Exactly.
Mhm.
I hate when people go about trying to make something seem like it is so ridiculous overpowered when it comes to buffs or just changes to characters in general, because looking at training mode is never a good indicator of how good a hero is. You're
No.
not going to be able to like replicate that exact situation in the game because you're not dealing with stationary targets. Hell, even when you're facing the stupid AI, they are not doing that. They are running, and sure, they're pre-programmed to run in a certain direction most of the times. So they're fairly easy to predict, but they're not just sitting there idle the entire time like so many people are making it out to be. So when I saw this video of Sojourn, I'm just like, yeah, that doesn't change anything.
No.
It's like,
It she's a little bit better. I will say, like, I did play her a couple of games. She is noticeably more consistent, but I don't think it'll push her to that level of where she was last season. Now, I will say the Soldier changes are significant. Like, Soldier is a menace right now. Like, he is almost back to the level where he was last year, like at the start of like Overwatch League, where it was like Merit 76 time. Like, he's not quite that good, but he is actually really good, especially if you can land the Helix rockets. Like, this is the first time I think they've put a lot of, I don't know, a lot of his power into direct hits on Helix rockets because, as somebody who plays a decent amount of Soldier, even when he's not good, uh, the kind of go-to for Helix rockets for our skill level is to like, okay, aim for the floor near them and that'll do enough damage. Whereas now, if you can direct hit, you can like direct hit and like two tap them with the like primary fire. Like, it is significant. Like, he does a decent amount of damage if you can hit them directly. So while I don't think the Sojourn change is enough to make her like meta, I think she's in a better place, and I think she's healthy where she's at now because she can still be a menace in the right hands if you can, get close, charge those railgun shots, and land those headshots. Whereas Soldier is good like all over the map, and there are a lot of maps that Soldier can do a lot of work on. So I think Custa said it. He said this is the time of year when they buff Soldier to the point where he's like stupidly overpowered, and then they bring it back a little bit. So I think we're kind of entering that phase. Like, I do feel like he's good. I feel like the next one we're going to talk about is probably more impactful, and I think she got the bigger buff. So yeah, we'll talk about that one.
Yeah, so looking at the turret changes, starting with Symmetra, the photon projector, secondary fire, max impact damage, as well as the max explosion damage was increased from 45 to 50. You also regenerate up to 30 shield health per second when primary fire deals damage to barriers or enemies with shield health. But they brought down the turrets a little bit. So sentry turret damage per second was reduced from 40 to 25, so that's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
But turrets now reveal enemies to allies while dealing damage, and for 1 additional second afterwards. And then Torbjorn, rivet gun secondary fire spread was reduced from 5 to 4.5 degrees. Turret damage was reduced from 14 to 11, while its cooldown was increased from 10 to 12 seconds. Overload now reloads 6 ammo on use. So obviously for a while we've kind of talked about how we do tend to see a few differences between like console and PC, primarily with, I wouldn't necessarily say like comfort picks, but heroes that do tend to see a bit more playtime over others, based on what system they're on. And I remember when Overwatch came out, and we were seeing a ton of like Torbjorn and Bastion, on console especially, and I would say that's changed quite a bit since then. Where it hasn't necessarily been so much like the turret heroes anymore. It's been more spam heroes. Like Junkrat has definitely seen like a shit ton of play on console, at least whenever I've hopped on. Like he's definitely been like, one of my comfort picks. Same with Pharah, but it's a little bit more difficult for me to play Pharah just because like I'm not used to like flying with the joysticks. So like I'm still like trying to figure that out. But like I still play a ton of Mercy on console, so like I'm still dealing with pocketing the Pharah to see like how they're moving around, but I'm still like nowhere near as comfortable as I would be with a keyboard and a mouse. So I find it really interesting that like we've kind of like gone through these cycles when it comes to like playing on console, where like we went from going from turrets to basically being spam rats to trying to figure out whether or not hitscan really has like a stable spot in console, because like it's still a lot of the hitscan players still haven't like really reached their peak, I feel like, still, which is really weird, especially with how much Pharah is in play on top of that. So you would think like maybe if the hitscan was a little bit better on console, then we wouldn't be seeing as much Pharah. So it's been an interesting like evolution over the course of Overwatch, over the years at this point in time, where like I feel like the changes, at least on PC, have been more gradual. So like I really want to hop on my PlayStation to see like how are these changes going to impact Symmetra and Torbjorn, specifically on console.
Yeah.
Because when I read them, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like they're drastically lowering the turret damage, which had been a fairly big problem on that platform for a significant amount of time. But the Symmetra changes, I'm really anxious to like hop in and play. And obviously, like I did play a ton of Soldier too, so want to see how that feels. The fact that like they kind of like hit every ability is like the one thing that I'm like, okay, like that's it's probably a bit much in this case.
Symmetra's good now. She is.
That's great. We've always wanted her not to just be like a very pocket situation.
I don't know. I was kind of happy where she was at before these changes, but now she's good on like every map. The turret change. So the reason people hated Symmetra turrets wasn't necessarily the damage; it was the slow, and she still has the slow. And now she has walls and a slow. So at like our level, the fact that I can throw turrets, like where was I playing? I think it was Night Market. Like the map you always play Symmetra on. What is that like? I think it's Night Market, where you TP to the point over the top and then you drop down and you put the turrets. Literally what I did is I put one turret there, one turret on the front door, one turret in the middle on like the closest doors, so it could hit both entry doorways, and then we knew wherever anyone was coming in. So like a tracer tried to flank around and we knew where she was, so I pinged her, So like the Tracer walked up to the door and literally like 4 people were looking at her and she just got deleted because at that point we knew where the Tracer was and the whole team knew. Um, so that is like really powerful. And the fact that she can now spam down like 200 HP heroes with 2 shots on her like right click is ridiculous. Like I was on Route 66 and I must have killed like this Cassidy. I think it was Cassidy, like 5 or 6 times, just randomly shooting through like hallways. So I know he had to be pissed. So and the final change, like the regenerating health, just makes her like such a nuisance for characters like Zarya, Sigma, Rhine, even Winston. Like Winston is hilarious because Winston will jump the back line and drop his bubble, and then you just charge off the bubble, go in, poke the Winston. Winston comes out. You're like, okay, I'll charge off the bubble again, regain my shields, regain ammo, poke the Winston, and then the Winston either has 2 choices. He can either stay in and hope he gets support, or die. Like that is it. So because Winstons that are a level jump in and then they're like, oh crap, I'm stuck here for 7 seconds, like what do I do now? So she is really good right now, especially at like our level. I don't know if this will affect like Overwatch League or Grandmasters or something like this. I have seen some people in Grandmaster play her, and she has been an absolute nuisance because in Grandmaster your overall awareness is better and your reaction time is faster. So if you see a turret go off, you're gonna turn much faster. You're not gonna have to rely on like somebody like me pinging her and being like, hey, I'm pinging her like 4 times, like she's coming around, like coming around behind us. So Sombra, or not Sombra, Symmetra's really good. Torbjorn is interesting. I played one game as Torbjorn. I didn't notice much of a difference. Like I noticed that the turret wasn't like getting as many solo kills as it used to, but he's still good against like his intended people. Like he's still good against flankers and stuff like that. Like he's great at disrupting Sombras, disrupting Tracers and Genjis and stuff like that. It just requires a little more awareness, I guess. So so I don't think this hurt Torbjorn as much as people thought it did. Now, I will say probably the lower ranks and, like you said, console might be affected a little more. So I am curious to see how that plays out. But overall, I think they're okay changes. I'm just so worried about the Sombra changes. Like Sombra is an or not Sombra. I keep saying Sombra. Symmetra. Symmetra is an absolute menace right now.
Which I love to see. Yep. So on the support front, Kiriko, Healing Fuda recovery was reduced from 1 to 0.9 seconds. And then we got some Zenyatta changes. Okay, so out of everything, I think I've probably seen the most disdain over the Zenyatta changes, more so than everything else combined.
Would you say the most discord over the Zenyatta changes?
Oh, for sure. 100%. So Orb of Discord max range was reduced from 40 to 30 meters. The time to wear off the target when not in line of sight was also reduced from 2 to 1.5 seconds.
This is a stupid change. Like the time to wear off is fine. Like I think that is a good change, but the meters, like I don't know. Zenyatta is already pretty hard to play on most maps, especially with the prevalence of Sombra. Like people see OWL teams running Sombra, so they run Sombra. And obviously Sombra does not work as well in uncoordinated environments. She does still work pretty freaking well against Zenyatta. So, yeah, this is a weird change. Like they either needed to like nerf the damage bonus or make it like I don't know, like the idea I heard that I thought was really good was like it's a cooldown ability. Like you could put Discord on somebody and it's on them for a little bit, and that's like your window to DPS them down, and then it goes away and it goes on cooldown. And the more like initially I was like that sounds really dumb, like that's counterintuitive to how his other orb works. But the more I think about it, I think that's actually a really good way to handle it, because it's like a debuff. So. Yeah, this is not it. Like as somebody who enjoys Zenyatta, I definitely understand how powerful Discord is, and I also understand that its main role is you put it on the tank and then you delete the tank. Like that is primarily what you do. Or you throw it on the Genji that's harassing your backline and one tap him. So uh, it's really weird they went this direction. I can't imagine this will stay as it is. Like they're gonna make more changes to Discord because this is kind of it really reminds me of like the Mercy change when they changed for Guardian Angel and everybody's like this just fucking sucks. Like this is stupid. Like everybody is like the same way. They're just they're not quite as vocal because it's not Mercy, and Mercy mains are very vocal. But a lot of people are really mad at this, so I would imagine this gets changed. And the Kiriko change is nice, but it doesn't affect anything. Kiriko's still good.
Yep. But we're still gonna be seeing a ton of Ana Brig.
Yep.
Which is still the primary meta selections out there, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Outside of this, we also had an update on PvE. Okay, now, before everyone freaks out, I know that is normally never a good sign.
In this case, it is
and
also
it's still
never
not.
good.
That remains true. So, if you were hoping, maybe there's an outside shot that maybe we will see additional PvE content releasing later in the year following Season 6, aka Invasion. Well, you're shit out of luck. So Emon had executive producer Jared Neese on the stream recently and was asking about upcoming content as well as changes coming to Overwatch 2. And Jared basically mentioned, the team has a target for how long it'll be for additional PvE content to hit. But the team wants to see what the community thinks about Invasion first. So he says that fans shouldn't expect to see the next round in the next season or the season after. So season 7, season 8. Right, let's see. We're in 9-week seasons. That would be 18 weeks. So that's 4.5 months. That's coming out. What season are we in? 5? That's next season.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. The math checks out. So the primary thing here was he kept stressing, okay, we want to see how the community reacts to the PvE missions out of the gate. And if there are aspects of that the players don't like, let's say, for example, replayability, which
what replayability?
we've seen pro players talking about this, echoing that sentiment that Spyder just said. So I understand the mindset of okay, we're gonna see how the initial ones do. Obviously, we already have others in development, but if we need to go in and make initial changes to help alleviate some of the community concerns about this, they're gonna take those steps to do so. Now that being said, for me personally, knowing that we are getting PvE this late, regardless of what changes were actually made to the system, I was never going to assume that we were going to see more PvE content this year after Season 6.
I was hopeful for Season 8.
Okay.
I'm with you. I was realistically not expecting it this year. But I'm still disappointed because, I don't know, this is just another slap in the face. What were those 3 years for? If you...
Okay, so I guess my question to you then, Spyder, would be, would you want to see it more okay, one season is when we have the new hero, then the next season is when we would have an additional mission, or however they're rolling it out.
Yeah.
So we would have hero one season, and then the map and the PvE content, whatever cycle they go through in the additional one, and then you're doing the alternate in that fashion.
Realistically, I would expect them to have at least 2 missions ready every other season because they've had 4 years of lead up to this point. I can understand down the line they could be all right, this is group 1 or whatever you want to call it, or story A, or this is the invasion saga, or what, however they want to PR speak it. It is going to be every other season for the next year or whatever, and then they're going to be okay, and then we're going to take a break, and we're going to go to the hero map for, a few seasons, and then we'll come out with the rebuilding saga or whatever they want to call it. They should have enough in the tank at this point that they should be able to do that. Now, I understand wanting to reiterate on feedback and stuff like that, but I think at this point, you need to take a step back and be like, all right, we just need to get the content out there. You'd be like, okay,
Right.
we'll reiterate on the feedback, but it won't be in the next story missions. It'll be in the story missions after that. And that's literally how Destiny does it with their story content. They're like, okay, we've heard the feedback. It's coming in season 23. Right now we're in season 21. And everybody's like, okay, that sucks, but at least we know they're working on it. Blizzard has, we know they have at least the resources to pull this stuff off because they've said as much. So I was just disappointed that we've had all this time and they've had all this lead up. They should be pumping out content. Like, if they want to get the goodwill back in players, I don't think this break is the right call. Like, I understand iterating on feedback. I mean, I work in a customer centric focused job with hospitals, which, if you've never dealt with the back end of the hospital, they're just as bad as dealing with the insurance companies. Like, they are like the worst people to deal with. So I understand iterating on client and customer feedback. But you know what customers really like? Content. Like, if you put the stuff in front of them, they may be like, oh, I didn't really like this. I'll be like, okay, well, here's some new stuff. We're going to fix the old stuff. And then you can go back to the old stuff. And then they can be like, oh, okay. Yeah, that works. So this approach to me, just is like another stain on me from like a customer service standpoint. I'm like, this is the wrong way to go about it. Like, you guys should have more than 3 missions available, especially if those 3 missions have nothing that changes in them. If they are the exact same every time, like, literally, they would have been better off in my eyes if they were like, look, we have to hold off on the second set of story missions because of the writer's strike or because of the actor's strike. Like, that would have been a more valid reason than we want to iterate on client feedback, because they've said, like, they're not going to be leaderboards. There's going to be nothing that changes between, the 3 PvE maps. The only thing that changes is voice lines, which are already recorded. So, like, you should have more than 3 missions ready to go, especially if those 3 missions are only 15 minutes long a piece. Like, I understand software development to a degree, so I understand that they should have had more than that ready in 4 years. Like, I understand, like, a lot of that was lost. So I'm maybe you have a year's worth of work and the other 3 years was the stuff that got scrapped. Hopefully that's not the case, but even then, a year's worth of work should be more than 40 minutes of content. Like,
yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we're also at this like weird point where, Team 4 is trying to do right with the community, but at the same time, like, we're in damage control. Yeah. And it's going to be damage control for the foreseeable future. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So, it seems like every time we're talking about PvE, it's as I said, it's never good news. And then it's like, even some of the stuff that they are feeding us, like, kind of in between, it's just like, okay, we're not really wetting the beak, so to speak, in this case. So it's like, okay, we're on to the next thing. It's just we're getting everything in bite size. So it's like, okay, we're getting the 3-part animated series. Okay, but we want something that's like, we would much rather prefer like 10 to 15 minute episodes compared to like these 5-6 minutes. Okay, we're only getting three missions. Okay, well, but what's the replayability factor of that? Oh, it's non-existent. Okay, cool. Well, when's the next wave coming out? We'll get back to you on that. It's like, okay, Jesus Christ, like,
and I get it. Like, they've pretty much said at this point that it is a PvP game with some story components. Like, I think that's where the disconnect in myself and the community is we wanted like this story, we wanted this lore, and we're still having a hard time separating ourselves from that. But again, you know how you do damage control? You release shiny new things. Like, isn't it Asmongold that says like every boycott is just a 3-minute cutscene away from being over? Like,
Yep.
that's all it is. Like, at this point, you should be like, yeah, we're listening. So season 6, season 8, and season 10 have our first arc, and then we will iterate on the feedback. And if we can get things sooner to you, we will. Like a freaking leaderboard. Like, why is there no leaderboard? Like, that is the weirdest thing to me. Like, they've had that in Junkenstein since the beginning. Like, I don't know. There's basic things like they're cutting that don't make any sense, and then they're still taking stuff back. So
Yep.
it's very weird. And to me, this says like Team 4 is in damage control internally. Like, we've heard about the turnover, we've heard about the working conditions, we've heard about all the bad stuff at Blizzard. To me, this says Team 4 is in damage control internally, and we just don't know how bad it is because we only see Jared, we only see Aaron coming out. So I feel like this is going to be something that, like, 3 years down the line, 2 years down the line, like Jason Schreier or Devin Nash or somebody's going to like put out an expose video on like how Overwatch shit the bed, like stuff like that. How you go from the only first person shooter game of the year winner to forgotten IP. I feel like we are ripe for that territory, and that's sad because the game is amazing. Like, even gripes aside, the gameplay is still solid. Like, it is, like I said, I've been playing a lot of Destiny, and let me just tell you, play 3 games of Overwatch and then go play 3 games of Destiny PvP, and you will wish you were playing Overwatch again. So I am disappointed by this news, but it's PvE news, so hopefully we're at the midway season point, so we've only got 4 weeks left at this point, maybe 5.
Yes.
So in August we'll get to play the missions and make our own opinions, which
Absolutely.
unfortunately, if they follow the trend of people who have actually played it, might not be great. But
Absolutely not.
I will reserve my judgment on them till I actually play them.
Yep. I wish I had tinfoil so I could put on the hat, but just imagine I'm wearing a tinfoil hat right now. Here's my take on this. So they keep cutting stuff, right? Like, that's been the primary thing. Overwatch 2 has essentially just been bringing back things that were taken away from us. So we're playing a lawn ball here. We're slow dripping content again. We are stripping things from the game, and we are gearing up for the release of Overwatch 3 when we add the leaderboard to the PvE missions and all these things that we should have had 10 to 12 months ago. That's just the cynic in me, just thinking how they're actually rolling this out. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, there are components that we have already seen in the game that should be there since day one with the roll of the PvE content, and if it's not there, then I'm not going to say that I'm going to be completely surprised by it, but it's just going to feel like more of the same. Like, guys, come on. Like, the answer has been literally right there in front of you. Staring you in the face, and people are going to bring it up.
Yep.
The community is not turning a blind eye to things like this, especially knowing that we're not getting what we were initially promised with the Overwatch 2 announcement. So, regardless of anything that's going on behind the scenes, like, Team 4 is under a microscope, both from the company, from the consumer, and it's like, I don't want to say it's a lose-lose situation, but it is 100% an uphill battle that they're going to have to figure out, and it's not going to be the easiest task, because it never is.
Nope.
But there needs to be enough to entice the consumer, because, like, even up to this point, yes, the game has been fantastic. The battle pass system at this point, hasn't been great, to be honest.
It is what it is. It's market standard.
Yes. Yeah, which we've already talked about to death, especially you with the breakdown compared to other titles at this point. So like, I'm not gonna say it's been a total bust, but like, it's it is what it is. And I've been dabbling in Pokemon.
Uh-oh.
The trading card game live version, which I don't know they even switched the client to the live version from like TCG Online. Apparently that happened last month. But I was going in there and I was like, oh, they completely got rid of like the trade-in market that they had.
Hmm.
And they have gone to the live service model. So they have a battle pass.
Oh boy.
Which I'll give you the basic rundown of this really quick, just because it is a little bit different. So Pokemon is using they have a currency, which you basically get by completing your daily quests. You only get 2 daily quests per day, which is equivalent to 1 battle pass level. And you essentially play about like a week worth of doing dailies to unlock the premium track through the currency. So you're not like you're not using real money to buy the currency to unlock the battle pass, which I thought was interesting. So that was definitely different out of the gate. So it's more of a okay, we're going to get you to actively play the game in order to unlock the premium track, but nothing is going to be gated behind real life money, which I was like, oh, that's actually really unique. And
that is cool.
You are able to when you build your collection, you do get like card points, for lack of a better term. I don't know like what they call it. It's kind of like the Hearthstone dust. So you are able to like craft cards for your decks as well. So like you can go look up meta decks and you can import, the deck code, and then you can see like what cards are missing, and then you can exchange your dust to create the cards that you are missing for whatever deck. So it's a little bit slower in that regard because you're not really able to like trade like cards for or packs for like what you are missing. But yeah, the battle pass there was like, I was like, oh, like this is completely different. And I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this because I was 100% honesty, Spyder. I was like, I know I'm going to be playing a ton of Pokemon. Let me throw my wallet at the screen. I can't do it. So I'm just like logging on, playing like 2 games to, get the dailies done. And then I'm logging off. And, like I've been very happy with it. So it's like, I'm not really spending money, so I can't really complain. And I'm like, man, I wish, I feel like the time I'm putting in is being rewarded, which is the key component here.
I mean, I play Honkai Star Rail and I've played Genshin Impact, and they have paid battle passes, but I feel like the return on investment there is better than Overwatch because the battle pass starts at like $5. So I mean, you can buy like the premium for the skier tips and like the tier skips and stuff like that. So and then I also buy like the Destiny battle pass, and then I buy like if Elder Scrolls Online is like the MMO I'm playing outside of Destiny as like a chill almost single, like I'm basically treating it like Skyrim, like I'm playing it almost single player, and I'm going through the story there. Like they don't have a battle pass, but they have like a monthly subscription that you can pay, so I pay that so I can play that. It just like, and then there's Valve. Like we haven't even talked about Valve. Valve got rid of the battle pass. Like Valve was the one who invented the battle pass, and they were like, yeah, so we've realized that the battle pass is not the best way to serve our customers. Like we can milk money out of them in a better way. So I don't know, like the battle passes to me always were like that cost fallacy, like sunken cost fallacy type of thing. Like, oh, you want this good stuff, you got to pay money, but then you got to play our game to level this thing up. So I've never really been like in love with battle passes. I've just kind of been like, okay, well, this is how the market works now. Like, if you're going to play a game, you're going to buy a battle pass. And I hope we move away from them because honestly, I think the games that are fun to play, you're going to play more regardless. Like I can tell you like Honkai Star Rail, like I log in and play that every day to do the dailies, like pretty much how you do Pokemon. Like I buy the battle pass, but it's never like the driving factor because the battle pass A is $5, like I said, and B is so easy to complete that just logging in daily, I'm done with the battle pass in like a week, and I still have like 2 months left on the battle pass before it ends. So I think if you are gonna do that kind of thing, like it doesn't need to be like this time commitment.
Nope, shit's falling off my wall.
Yeah, holy shit.
That dropped earlier today, so I'm not surprised.
I was like, is this like something just coming through the wall or what?
No.
But yeah, I think battle passes in general
Mhm.
should be like something you just get as a bonus for playing the game. Like Overwatch's battle pass is extremely grindy, and I've talked at length that why I don't like Overwatch's battle pass. The way you acquire experience for it, like it should be much faster. It should be much easier to complete, or much more engaging to complete. But like I said, I've talked a bunch about it, so hopefully, you know, the iterative nature that they say they are following, I hope that includes it, because there is so much better things that they can do out there with the game. Like if you make good cosmetics, people are going to buy them. I mean, shit, look at League of Legends. Like how much money do you think they made on KDA skins outside of, you know, versus a battle pass? Like stuff like that will sell skins. Like you can sell skins, and people can complain about the $20 per skin, but that's what people buy stuff for. I mean, people are buying guns in Valorant for hundreds of dollars. So you know, Destiny's store, like, you know, I've been talking a lot about Destiny. Destiny has one of the worst monetization models in the world, and people are unhappy with it, but it is still more rewarding than Overwatch at this point. So I don't know. Like we'll see where they go from here with it, but yeah, Overwatch just in general has. I hope they are listening.
Yep. Go figure. Like it's been really humid, and for whatever reason, that middle one is just like, yeah, I'm not staying.
do you put it up with like 3M hooks?
No, I have like the Oh god, what the fuck? Like the wall strips.
Oh, okay. You
That are
have
like
like
Velcro.
yeah, I don't know if you can put holes in your walls, but I use the little gorilla like
Yeah, I know what you're
things.
talking about.
Yeah, those things are awesome. Like that's how I hang everything up, because if I ever need to like cover the walls, boom, it's like 2 seconds of spackle and it's done.
Right.
So
I'll deal with that shit later. But anyways, moving on to esports news. Quite a bit going on. So I'm gonna spitfire all the roster updates that we've got. So let's start with a player specific announcement. I mean, we never do these, so that's primarily why I added it. So Dante, what's going on with Dante? As we mentioned on our last episode, he got released, he retired from professional Overwatch, or at least Overwatch League. Said he's going back to college. So we got two updates on Dante. Dante was added to Team USA for the World Cup, and he also signed with Maryville Esports for collegiate play. So you know, I was looking at the roster, and I'm like, man, how big are collegiate rosters in Overwatch? As I'm looking at this, okay, so what did they list him as? They listed him as a tank. They also have False and Mikey on the active roster, so there's 3 tanks. They have 3 supports in Juby, Cirrus, and Squid, and then they also have 3 DPS.
Yep.
In Kane, Tree, and Vision. So I'm like, man, I wonder if all of the collegiate teams are that deep in regards to like their overall size. But you know, it was really cool to see, because it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, all right, I want to go play with friends, and then like immediately we hear about a sign-in on that front, and obviously like collegiate has been booming as of late. Hell, we've seen collegiate sign-ins to the Overwatch League for the mid-season point, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, specifically for the San Francisco Shock. Because one of the local players got signed to the Shock, and we got to see him play earlier as one of the new supports for the team, which was great to see. But yeah, Dante's still doing things. He'll get an opportunity to play for Team USA, which will be great. I don't know if they announced like what role he is.
He said on Plat Chat that he is listed as a tank, but he will play anything. He said he got specifically signed. He said the Sombra may come out, but he said he got put on the roster just as like as a backup.
Okay.
And specifically for like Doomfist and maybe Ramatra. He said they feel like they had like a gap there.
Hmm.
Uh, so we'll see. Like I don't think he's like a direct Aspire replacement, um,
Right.
or like somebody to run the Sombra so Sugarfree can run the Tracer kind of thing. Uh, from what he said on Plat Chat, he's kind of like free form, and he said he's the same way at Maryville. He's listed as a tank, but he can play whatever. He also said on Plat Chat that he's pushing for Maryville to stream their practices and games so that he can kind of double dip there because he was very adamant on Plat Chat that he wants to A, focus on studies and B, work on his streaming career.
Hmm.
He said that's a good way to kind of like double dip. He also said that the Maryville is way less time intensive. He said they only practice for like 2 hours a night. So versus like
Oh, that's hardly anything.
yeah, for them, I mean that's nothing. So we'll see. He's I believe he said he has a starting role on Maryville, but I wouldn't quote me on that one. But he
Okay.
was like he was like if you want to know like Dante's true thoughts, he did an interview with Yiska and he also was on Plat Chat this week. Go watch both of them because he is very candid about just everything. He
Mhm.
like I don't want to say like he spilled the beans, but he was definitely very like open about certain things and definitely about like other teams. So
Right. Right. So going around the league, we had the Honcho Spark signing Pineapple, and
as
I
a
put in parentheses as a support, because that is a different role for him. The Boston Uprising released Striker, and then they added Kareev as an assistant coach. San Francisco Shock released Hezane and Vindame, and they went out and signed Probe, Luke Mino, Renko from Illinois State University, local
mm-hmm.
player, as well as brought back Striker. So if you look
Yeah.
at Striker's like Wikipedia page, it's the funniest shit because it's just Boston Uprising, San Francisco Shock, Boston Uprising, San Francisco Shock. It just keeps going. New York Excelsior released Halo and Lep, and they went out and signed OG. Vancouver Titans signed Hezane. Mayhem released Sauna and signed Maka.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Spitfire release Scaripa and Lethal and signed Sauna. Okay, so across the board here, I know on the last episode we were talking about the Hanjo Spark, and we're like, okay, like these moves kind of like signal, okay, they're gonna bring back a familiar face, and we were assuming it was Liege.
Yeah.
No, they turned to Pineapple, who I mean, still same category, like it's someone they've had. Uh, but he's off-roll, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I feel like we've seen this dance so many times at this
Yep.
point, and we can cherry pick select individuals who have not only met expectations but surpassed expectations on performing on and off roll. But I would say like across the board, if we were to like have a pulse on like what the average level of consistency is for overall success rate, it would be on the lower end of the scale.
Yeah.
So
Would they say?
when I saw Pineapple, specifically listed as a sport, I'm like, oh god, here we go again. Like this is just gonna end up being more of the same. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, probably just gonna be in Brig Jail would be my assumption.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where he ends up. I think it's a lot easier for a DPS to go to support than it is for a DPS to go to tank or a support to
Mhm.
go to tank. I think supports can go to DPS. I think it's a little harder, um, but as long as you understand positioning, I think it depends on the player, obviously, because certain players can play anything. Like, we've seen Color Hex in contenders win contenders on all three roles. So certain players understand the fundamentals of all three roles well enough to do well, or at least do enough to warrant that switch. So I am holding out judgment on Pineapple till I see him play. But if this goes poorly, I will be the first one to jump on the "what the fuck were you thinking" train. Um, as far as the other stuff, like obviously the striker meme is the striker meme at this point. Like I don't think we need to reiterate that. I mean, Shock did it on their own with their own intro video. I think the other people Shock signed look pretty good. I did find it kind of funny that Luke Mino has now won more maps with the San Francisco Shock than he ever did with the Paris or the Vegas Eternal. So that
it took one game.
One game. Actually, it took 2 maps. It didn't even take 1 game. It took 2 maps.
That is true.
Actually, technically, it took 3 maps because the second map was a draw.
It was a draw. Yeah.
But if you want to count that draw, then it took 2 maps because the draw was technically not a loss.
He was already ahead of the curve.
Right. So Excelsior is a good change. Like, you got to think OG is going to be the starting main support at this point because they let go of all their other main supports. Titan signing, he's saying, I feel like was just an opportunity signing with the release of Aspire. I think he's saying just didn't shine where he was, so I think he's saying can do well on the Titans, but we'll have to see because he's saying and Sugar Free have a lot of overlap again, so we'll have to see where they end up. Sauna being released by Mayhem and then them signing Maka, they came out today and said that like this is a future roster move. They are just looking towards building a future roster, which is fine. Like
that's
totally
that like for me though, Spyder, like that's the type of signings I want to see at the midseason point.
Right.
Mayhem were very transparent, like with this signing. They're like, hey, like we have a lot of contracts coming up. Like this is someone that we can develop in the meantime. They were talking about like how they still wanted him to play for NT or whatever contenders team he was playing for at the time. So he's still getting his reps in. Like he's not just sitting idle. And they are working on getting his visa, getting him over to NA to play with the team. But like, how many teams do we know out there who have like been like putting themselves in a position where okay, like we're thinking longer term, we're not thinking short term, like we're already thinking about the next season and making sure like we have someone in place. And like if he doesn't work out, okay, like that's fine. But very smart sign in that retrospect because it's very uncommon to see someone like outright saying like okay, he might not see a lot of play out of the gate, but this is someone we can develop. We'll see how he does. We are very comfortable with someone being the one tank for this team. And if Maka can come in and fill whatever off role if needed, like he is going to be there. But it seems like in regards to job security, like he's in a pretty good spot right now.
Right. Yeah, no, this is exactly what we wanted to see in mid-season signings. So, I'd like to see him get in some reps against maybe like I keep saying Paris, Vegas. They're so bad they've gone back in time. So Vegas, stuff like this. Like I hope we get to see him at least get out on the field a little bit. And finally, the Spitfire signings. I think signing Sauna is good because Sauna is from the EU, so you're going to have that local EU talent slotting in very nicely with the Spitfire. I just think the Spitfire in general have been dealt a bad hand this season because they have their identity as the Rhine team, and then Rhine is hot garbage compared to the Sombra Tracer Dive. So I think adding Sauna will help. It didn't so much today, but I think in the general it rounds the team out a little bit better, but they're still kind of subjects to a bad meta for their players. So it is what it is at this point. But overall, all good signings, all good moves. Obviously the Shock roster, it looks much better. Like they beat the Gladiators today, and they looked like they slotted in well. All the new players, I want to say it was the most cohesive we've seen the Shock all season, which is really interesting to see because they are, dealing with a new team. So, and they were playing the Gladiators, which are not the easiest team to beat.
Yeah, I think the really the only thing that really stood out in regards to fight initiations Their dive was looking pretty solid, especially with the Winston dive also running a wrecking ball quite a bit.
Hmm.
Probe specifically on the Sombra and EMP usage was like the one standout thing that wasn't always seeing the value.
Yeah, but we've
But
seen
that's
the
that's gonna
best.
come in time, you know.
Yeah, we've seen the best Sombras with EMPs all the
Yeah,
time.
but I'm
So
just saying it was fairly consistent though in
it
regards
was.
to not getting a ton of value on that front. But yeah, the Shock have definitely underperformed this season.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of that is, everyone saw how much proper fucked last season, and everyone's like, oh yeah, Shaka are gonna be absolutely fine. They're gonna keep pulling from O2 Blast, which is great, since that is the feeder team. And we are seeing more O2 Blast players in this case. Striker being back, we'll see how he does, because he's kind of been all over the place in the past, like every time he shifts teams.
Hmm.
But I was thoroughly impressed with Lucamino and Renko as like the
They
new
looked
support
good.
duo just coming in. They looked extremely good. Like right out of the box, like, all right, we're just gonna slot them in. We're gonna be good to go. So yeah, like we had matches today as we were talking about. It was a day of 3 Overwatch.
Hmm.
We had Mayhem defeating the Outlaws, Atlanta Raid defeated the Spitfire, and then the Shock defeated the Skylanders in 4 maps because one of them was a draw. That last map in particular was absolutely fantastic on Coliseum, of all places. Our
Yeah.
least favorite map, because we were entering overtime and it was legitimately a tie.
Yeah.
It was a tug of war to end the map, which was great to see. Um, but in regards to the summer stage, just a couple of general notes on that front. We are on the 2.5.0.1 patch, which was the one that dropped during our last recording, which was June 28th.
Yep.
The stage also consists of opens, qualifiers, and knockouts for the East region, with qualifiers happening in the West, which will also feed directly into the postseason, starting with the play-ins. Uh, so, other notes after the launch of Season 6, which is the Invasion patch, the new support hero, as well as Flashpoint, aka the new game mode, is going to be playable in the second half of the summer stage,
Hmm.
following 2 bye weeks. In regards to the East, specifically for the contenders teams that qualified, we have O2 Blast, Pokerface, Pantera, as well as Streamers. And yeah, so again, we saw the new Shock roster. They looked pretty good. They were very competitive. Like it was not like a one-sided affair. Like yeah, regardless of what the scoreline said, it was a hard-fought victory for the
Hmm.
Shock, which was great to see. And it's like throughout the season, obviously the Shock has not performed to the level of expectations. So to see like this new look come out, really just sweet and right out of the gate, like this is what we were wanting to see. So it's going to be a very curious tale to see how this team is going to adjust and how they're going to improve over the course of the second half of the season. Because based off of like early impressions, like this team has the tools to right the ship in this case.
Hmm. Easily.
They're too good to be like mid-table, you know. So we'll see how they improve over the course of these upcoming weeks. But I know you had mentioned or were wanting to know like, hey, like what patch are they on? So we got that information out there, so you guys know. I know they are doing like a couple more of like the Overwatch League skins as well.
Hmm.
I know it was like the Diva one and like one other one. But we have a ton of matches this week, throughout the week, since it is Thursday through Sunday this week. But all in all, I don't think it's going to be 3 Overwatch across the board, but that's just how we opened the week, at least.
No, and I unfortunately only saw the last match, so
Same.
I didn't get to see the first 2 matches. So I want to go back and watch them. But looking at the schedule, it looks like it's going to be a fairly competitive stage. We do have APAC coming in tonight, basically very soon.
Yeah.
And that will be with the inclusion of the contenders teams. So we'll see how that goes. But overall, like I think it's going to be cool. It's going to be weird to have that 2 week break. So I'm curious to see what they have planned for that. That is in August, so that it's definitely coming faster than you would think. Like we're going to get
Right.
a couple of weeks of July, and then like the first week of August, and then we're off for 2 weeks. So I'm curious to see how that goes. I'm also curious to see how APAC plays out, just because of the fact that APAC will not play Flashpoint because they're in the qualifiers now and they don't have their games listed there. So I imagine the first time them playing Flashpoint will probably be an elimination bracket, right? If it plays out the same way as it did in the spring stage, which could be very interesting if Flashpoint ends up being like a completely like borked game mode. So I'm curious to see how Flashpoint turns out. I am interested. I mean, it's cool. I guess I'll sum this up in one spot. I think it's good that they are doing this because this is what I've been asking for personally the whole time. Is they've been transparent. Like, look, once that patch hits and season 6 comes and that new hero's out and the new map mode is out, we're gonna take a break and then we are gonna be on that patch. And I would assume they will probably be on that patch till the end of the season, at that point, unless there's something major, like super crippling. But I have to feel like that is the patch that they are going to take into playoffs and grand finals. So I think that's really good, and I think they should come out and say that. Then, if they don't want to do it now, like maybe they want to wait until they verify that it is a stable client. But I think that should be like, okay, we're going to launch Flashpoint August 26th, and we're going to launch the new hero August 26th. And this is going to be the meta that the teams have to suss out until the grand finals. And I think if they came out and said that, I think everybody would be like, that's awesome. Like, we know what it's going to be. The only, like, hang up people may have is competitive integrity, that most of this qualifier was, in the Apex condition, all of this qualifier was played on a technically different patch. But I think it's still within the realm of okay if they are upfront about it early.
Right.
So we'll see. Like I'm excited that they are doing this. I'm excited for all these games coming up. Like tomorrow we get to take a look at the new New York Excelsior, situation when they play the new Vegas Eternal. So that'll be fun. The Shock do play the Justice tomorrow, so we'll see how the Justice are looking. But I have to favor the Shock for that one, and then Gladiators play the Valiant. Obviously, I feel like Gladiators.
Battle for LA. Woo!
Yeah, the return of Battle for LA. I have to feel like Gladiators are the easy favorites for that
Easy
one.
dub. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I mean there's a bunch of masters the rest of the week. Like I don't want to go one by one. I'm trying to look to see if there's.
We also have the battle for the True North between Toronto Defiant and Vancouver Titans on
Yeah,
Saturday.
I was just looking at that one. We also have Houston versus Boston. I think that one will be good because we'll get to see if Houston really has struggled as much, because like I said, I haven't watched the Houston game, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I have heard from somebody who did watch it that they looked like they had some miscommunication problems. And unfortunately Ramses is not here, so I can't like poke fun at him. But I do want to see how Houston is looking. Like maybe it was just like a first game jitters or something, or something weird's going on. But
I will say though, the match that I'm most intrigued by is O2 Blast versus Dallas Fuel. So I don't know if you've been keeping up with like contenders sign-ins at all, Spyder.
No.
But since our last episode, O2 Blast had signed Tour U. So they are running Tour U and Profit for their DPS duo right now. And I know like O2 Blast, we've talked about it. They've been the feeder team for the Overwatch League, primarily for the San Francisco Shock. But like when you look at how many players have been signed to the Overwatch League, okay, let me see how many former players we have, at least from this year alone. Let's see, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. there's 15 players in total that have left. And 9 or 10 of them were signed to Overwatch League this season. That is staggering. Like, holy, like that just shows you how much talent has been on this team. But this roster has only been together since basically the first week of July.
Yeah.
So like they're still very, very new. So I want to see if we're going to see like any sort of regression from that team. But like as someone who's been a fan of competitive Overwatch since like the Gosu Gamer weekly days, like when I see Who Are You getting signed again, I was like, all right, let's fucking go. Let's bring out the Genji. Let's see what happens. Give me Sparkle versus Who Are You. Like I want to see that. I don't care how new the roster is. I want to see those two go head to head. And I'm looking forward to it. I don't think O2 Blast is going to win by any stretch of the imagination, but like just the anticipation of like a battle between those two gets me really giddy, and I cannot wait to see how they perform and to see like how many more of these players are going to be signed during the offseason, because it's like the turnover rate for this team alone has been like 85% from O2 Blast to the Overwatch League. It's just been absolutely absurd. And that's not counting the prior season, where literally every player that left the team got signed to the Overwatch League, outside of like maybe one person, and two at the most.
And one of them is on Dallas Fuel. So yeah, Bliss used to play for O2 Blast. So yeah, that one could be interesting. I don't know, like from what we saw, Junker Queen is viable, so I'm curious to see if Dallas tries to force that. Right. I guess it just depends on map picks, so we'll see. I do, even as a resident Dallas Fuel fan, I still think Dallas is going to struggle because it is that hard Winston meta. They let Fearless go, and now they're like, Fearless, come back. So I love Hanbin, and I think Hanbin is a phenomenal tank player, but obviously if I'm picking a Winston player, I'm probably going to pick Fearless over Hanbin. So yeah. We'll see. Like, who knows? They may open it up, and we'll see how things go from here. But right now, it still looks like we're in that hard Winston meta. So, unless APAC pulls an APAC, we're
gonna run D.Va. Yeah.
I feel like D.Va is viable on some maps, and we have seen that. But it's still not as good as the Winston on most maps. So we'll see how it turns out. The really outside of that one, the other one that I'm interested in is Toronto versus Valiant, because that is a low tier game, and I think that will give us a good baseline of what to expect from Toronto at this point, because Toronto is also a big question. So while not the most exciting game, like it's not like Shock versus Gladiators, it's not like the heavy hitter, top tier Atlanta versus Florida type of game. It will answer questions, and those are the types of games I want. Is like, what can we expect from these teams going forward? So it'll be a fun week. Like I am sad I missed the first two matches today. Like I said at the top of the show, I've been stupidly busy all week. So, and I had that Destiny raid. Normally I would have watched it before the show, but other things had called my name. So we'll see. I will probably do a null sector next week to cover all this stuff, and then give a heads up on what's coming this week now that is back in full swing. I didn't do one last week because all I really had to talk about was World Cup, and all that was, I mean, if you watched the World Cup games, they were all pretty one-sided. Like the most exciting World Cup games were EU, and even those kind of turned out how people expected them to. Like, I think Saudi Arabia was like the one sleeper that wasn't even a sleeper after the first couple of games they played. So South Korea and Japan made it out of their side. So I don't know. There wasn't much to talk about last week. So I'm like, dude, I'm not doing that. And I knew there was a patch this week. So but next week I will probably do another null sector just on Overwatch League or maybe my thoughts on Genesis and Overwatch League, like as a whole. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Sounds good. So with that being said, it is the clock's striking like midnight, at least by me, or 1
It's
a.m.
1
over by
a.m.
you.
here.
So let's wrap things up. So again, guys, if you're looking to stay connected with us, you can find us over on Twitter at HND Overwatch. Our video content is available on YouTube at HND Overwatch, and of course, you can talk to us and our community over on Discord at discord.me/O2LN show. Now, as for the host, you can find Ramses, who I guess you misclaimed him this week. That's fine. He'll come around at some point, I'm sure. At Ramses_GG. You can find myself at Totally Drunk, and Spyder. How can our listeners reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at _Spyder Gaming, and you can find me on Threads, the hot new meta Twitter competitor at the same at _ Gaming.
Yeah, Threads has been interesting.
It's honestly, I've been having a lot of fun on it. Like I've been talking to the promotional manager for NRG. I've talked to like multiple Overwatch like personalities. Like it's been a lot of fun. Like whereas Twitter, like you get buried under the bullshit. Whereas like there's so little people interacting on the Overwatch community. Like I got a reply from like the Boston Uprising and stuff like that. So it's actually been kind of fun on Threads. Like I have my complaints about the platform, and I'm definitely not being like it's the Twitter killer, but it has been a lot of fun. Like I said, I have had a full discussion with the promotional manager of NRG where it ended with me apologizing for shit talking Profit during the grand finals last season. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So check it out. Like I don't know, I don't know if it'll replace Twitter, but it might eventually.
Who knows? But yeah, it's there. But it's interesting times because it's the centerpiece or the continuation of the ongoing, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk fight.
Yeah.
Continuing, which is it gonna happen? I don't know.
Look, if they could just both take each other out at the same time.
Yeah, double knockout. What are the odds on that? Let's put some money on it. But anyways, guys, that will do it for us here tonight on Heroes Never Die. This has been episode 260. I've been your host, Simply Drunk, joined as always by my co-host Spyder. And again, we are off next week. We'll be back the week after. So we will see you guys back in 2 weeks. Enjoy the games. Go fill out your pick'ems, which I completely forgot to do because I forgot to put Thursday games today. Whoops, too. My bad. I'll go back to get the rest of the week. Before the East games play in like 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever it ends up being. I don't know. The time zones, man, it fucks with your head. But we'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll see you then, guys.
Bye.